Who said that? Who said the immigrant poem? Okay. That's pretty deep. This poem is about immigrants. How many people like immigrants? That's what's up. Huh? You surrounded? Well, that's good. That poem wasn't even on my radar, but I'm gonna do it. Yeah, it's called The Story of an Immigrant. I saw an immigrant the other day, sitting on a corner, sipping a cold, crying bottle of water. His body drenched in the sweat of today's labor. I shook his hand, and the texture of his palm felt like honest work. His eyes were dirt roads that led back to his home country, where his childhood memories set Indian style in nostalgia, reminiscent of the days when he was free to live as a cinnamon brown boy, his skin caramelized by a Mexican sun, the smell of his mother cooking miracles in the kitchen while he played in the field they grew their life from was still perched on the tip of his tongue. I asked him his name, and when he spoke, his broken English fell fragile from his mouth like a child learning to walk, but he made sure his smile told me that he wasn't a threat, that he belonged in his country too. His Budweiser t-shirt was decorated in somebody else's paint, and his oversized jeans falling apart at the seams looked like they haven't had a day off in a while. Beneath his storied pupils were bags hanging heavy with America's burdens. His body, a run-on sentence, tired of explaining himself to people who don't take time to sift through his speech. We began a conversation that was foreign, but yet familiar to me. And I could tell that his voice had been a locked gate into now. He told me how he came to America with $57 in his back pocket and a book bag filled with optimism and toiletries and hope and fear. Fear of leaving his country for the first time and migrating to a land where man might despise his being, like him being here was a burden for America, like everybody's ancestors who wasn't slaves wasn't also immigrants searching for a better life, like they really discovered this country, like the Native Americans didn't already set up shop on American soil before we baptized the trail with their tears. He told me at one time, a patriotic man from Texas posing as God accused him of stealing jobs from decent Americans. My face curled into a question mark, confused, because this man did the type of work that average citizen in this country frowns upon. His fingers calloused and aged 10 years for trying to earn the piece of America's pie, but some still see his hands as thief, murderer, only good for holding knives and pulling triggers. He told me how CNN is a horror film him and his people try not to watch. All of this talk about building the wall has made him claustrophobic. Afraid someone would come and trump his American dream. Afraid he would have to feed his family in the ocean away for the rest of his life. Afraid that this so-called free country will one day misplace his green card on purpose. To say I felt sorrow for him was an understatement. As I sat and listened to this man unfold his fears before me, my heart abandoned my chest for him. My eyelids were a dam holding back a stream of tears, and my spirit man became uneasy and couldn't sit comfortable inside of my body. And isn't that what compassion is? Isn't this man worth our love? Worth a conversation the length of the American anthem? Isn't he worth the song of freedom we keep stored stingy inside of our throats? Isn't empathy that Christ-like trait inside of us that makes us adopt someone's struggles as our own? And speaking of Christ, doesn't this man's story sound a lot like a Jew quite a few of us know in this room? A story of a historical baby born in Bethlehem. His parents fled him to a foreign land called Egypt because a petty king with a heart dark as a moonless midnight wanted to kill him. I'm pretty sure Joseph and Mary didn't have the proper documents to relocate Jesus, but they moved him anyways. But yet we bury grace under the American flag and let Fox News convince us that immigrants sneaking their children into this country for a better life are more terrorists than the KKK in backwoods Alabama. Riddle me how, America. Christ was also an immigrant seeking refuge in a land where man might despise his being. He also came to do the work nobody else wanted to do. He also left his home and the only father he has ever known to provide a better life. I mean, eternal life for his family. But how many Christians will vote to build a wall for Jesus if he ever came back in the flesh? Will we recognize him as the one who spoke this fickle nation into existence? Or will he just be another immigrant, waiting for America to open her stubborn arms to embrace him? But you know what? This story isn't about what I think. Have you ever heard of the man named Jesus? I asked him. And he just smiled at me. He smiled at me with all of his teeth, as if I mentioned an old friend or something. And he said, yes, Preston, of course I have. And I said, isn't it funny that you live in the most God-fearing country in the whole world, and nobody told you that your background is more like Jesus than the average citizen? Y'all bored yet?